Good afternoon, wrestling fans, and welcome to the April 15th, Friday, April 15th edition of Wrestle Talk Show. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, here to bring you the latest and greatest professional wrestling news. Today we have a lot of TNA news and ROH news. Final lineup for TNA's Lockdown pay-per-view. Special guest appearances at upcoming events. Related wrestling news, bits, rumors, show demographics, all this and much more. We recap Retro Night and particularly the WrestleMania three-way between Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chris Benoit, where Chris Benoit lived his dream of becoming world champion, and discuss kind of in detail how you can watch that still and respect the wrestler and the character without necessarily respecting the man behind the wrestling and the character. And also we'll discuss in relation Martha Hart's lawsuits, Owen Hart's death, obviously, in the related to wrestling because it happened at a show, and how we think Owen would want his likeness to be used in a business that he loved, and not something you've gotten my opinion on yet. So definitely those two subjects, definitely something to touch in the segment of the show. But before we get into that, we want to thank our audience for watching. And we're going to get into right now exactly where that audience comes from. You guys are showing the program great improvement on a daily basis now. So we want to thank you guys. Remember to like or subscribe to our YouTube videos. We'd prefer that you subscribe, but like everyone, leave feedback on everyone. YouTube.com/CWE Company. CWE Company. Mails can now be sent to CWE Company at Facebook.com and CWE Company at gmail.com. So take your pick. If you want to write on our wall and throw us a message at the same time, both have been, what I've been told, are our Gmail account has always been usable, but the Facebook thing is something new we're trying, just a different outlet, a different way for you to communicate with us. But of course, if you like the old way, feel free to stick with it. Visit our show site at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Interact with our online forums. Don't click the PayPal option and support the show link. Donate either via financially or, like I always say, as little or as much as you want. And if you can't donate financially, we understand. But turn on a friend. Support the show. Subscribe. There are a bunch of different ways you can do it. It's all outlined via our Facebook, YouTube channel, and Twitter, and all the pages we have out there. There's plenty to do, plenty of ways to interact. And we're going to throw out there again that this is something new. We're throwing out a logo contest. You guys know the show as Wrestle Talk Show, so I'll just make a note of that, literally live, that we want to see submissions from our viewers, preferably, of the three letters or the name itself, WTS or Wrestle Talk Show, be incorporated into a logo we can use. This will be a 1-month process from now until the 15th of May. We'll pick the actually, it's ironic. We'll pick the show logo on the 2003, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 09, 10, 11. We'll literally pick, guys, on a personal note real quick. Submissions will stop midnight the May 14th and will be announced on May 15th and the 8-year anniversary of my mother's death program. Kind of off topic there, but definitely something to mark. Both events are definitely a way for me to keep track of them, as sad as that sounds. I'm also working on the 1-year anniversary, which will be sometime in June, I believe. I'll have to look back and get an exact date. But yeah, we'll detail the prizes And you can send submissions of the artwork to cwecompany@gmail.com or any of the ways that we previously mentioned. Remember, WTS or the whole show name has to be used in some way, shape, or form in your logo. I can see how you can work it in, but I'd prefer if my well, you can throw my name in there, but preferably, ideally, just use the letters. Be creative. I look forward to the creativity from our now from 38 to 41 committed subscribers. Thank you, guys, and let's get into your show ratings and demographics. Kind of a quiet day. Impact ratings have not come in yet. Spoilers are in, but an exact rating I haven't found yet, and I've been to all the major sites. But let's get into it. Our male audience, as of 10 minutes before the show, well, yeah, literally 5-10 minutes before the show, make up for 92% of our audience, while the females increased from yesterday to 8% of our total audience. The 45 to 54-year-old demographic dropped 10%, and today makes up for 40% of overall viewership, male and female alike. Key demographics were as follows. 25 to 34-year-old demographic holds 25% male and female audience. 18 to 24-year-old demographic holds 22% of our total audience. And as we just mentioned, an increase from 38 to 41 committed subscribers. Not a big success, but success nonetheless. And let's get it up there, guys. Like I say, we completely understand in today's economy not being able to financially support anything outside of your spectrum, but it doesn't take too much time to like the videos, like the show, commit to subscribe to the show. It's all free. It's all things you can do to increase our fan base and help us grow as you grow as wrestling enthusiasts. Just a bit of a breakdown for you, since we only do this once every couple episodes. The United States, no surprise, makes up 63.1% of our total audience. This applies to both male and female. United Kingdom falls second with 17.1% of our audience coming from there. And bringing up in third place, bringing up the rear, so to speak, Canada. Our friends in Canada make up 7.1% of our audience. And finally, viewership in Japan makes up 3.6% of our audience, and that is all videos, male and female alike, etc., etc. So thank you again, guys. Now on to your wrestling news. FCW on tour this weekend, featuring an appearance by Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and the NXT rookies. This weekend also showcases Sean Waltman, formerly known as X-Pac, but appearing in Shakara as the 1-2-3 Kid in the first round of the King of Trios tournament matchups. Oh, I should have made this a segment, but I'm sure after lockdown, these guys will give me plenty of material. The Jarrett TNA news, upcoming lockdown pay-per-view news. Jarrett versus Angle is now an ultra male rules match, and I really was excited until I seen it's just another way of disguising both adjectives you can use with TNA. It's really just a neat way, or a confusing way, of describing a best out of 3 falls match. The first fall is to occur via pinfall, second fall can be won via submission, and the third fall, if needed, escape from the cage. Your lockdown pay-per-view final lineup matches are as follows. Matt Morgan versus Hernandez, Samoa Joe versus the Pope, Knockouts champion Madison Rayne versus Mickie James with Mickey's hair on the line. That's not WWE-esque. I believe I've seen that in Victoria versus Molly Holly in that same DVD while we're on the subject. X Division Ultimate Escape match, Max Buck versus Jeremy Buck versus Chris Sabin versus Suicide versus Robbie E versus Jody Lethal versus Amazing Red versus Brian Kendrick. Four-way tag match versus Scott Steiner and Crimson versus Inc. Inc. Made up of Shannon Moore and Jesse Neal versus Orlando Jordan and Eric Young versus Doug Williams and Magnus. Your pre-show is going to be Brother Devon versus Anna Ricla. Anarquia. So pronounce that however you may. I'm not ashamed to admit that it'll probably take me 20 minutes to sound that out right, but I never claimed to be perfect. WWE Superstars will now air on Thursday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WWE's website. This week's featured match, taped on Monday, is Great Khali versus Zack Ryder. Also from the Raw brand will be Maurice versus Melina versus Natalya and Gail Kim in a Divas tag match. The SmackDown brand will feature a similar matchup of Kurt Hawkins versus Chris Masters. ROH adds 2 more matches to upcoming May event, a First Blood tag match and a no DQ match. In a First Blood match, the Briscoes will face All Night Express in another grudge match between the two teams. Also, former ROH World Champion Roderick Strong will face El Generico in a no DQ match. April 12th, 2011, Kurt Angle tweets that he is working out the contract details, but is in fact re-signing and plans to re-sign with TNA. And I put in my notes to stop and discuss this for a minute. I'm all for Kurt Angle. I don't want anybody to think that I single him out. TNA does what TNA does. WWE does what WWE does. And we ridicule and review all that. But I'm all for Kurt staying if there's an end or a transition or a final period where you can't go anymore with Angle versus Jarrett, where you just can't make, forgive my own figure of speech here, but there comes a point where the old cliche, you can't get blood from a stone. You can't bleed something that died months ago after a certain point, and insert adjective wherever you want. And that is, like I just said, as long as it's something different, as long as there's a conclusion to this that after all these rematches makes sense, which I think we're past the point of it making sense. For some reason, I have this fear that you're going to have all these Jeff Jarrett versus Angle matches, and it's going to be left open-ended. You're already sick of it, but then when it's left open-ended, it's like, okay, you did all that for essentially nothing. And I'm deathly afraid of that they're just going to stop. There's going to be no real resolution, and it's going to be open-ended, even though me, a lot of other columnists, a lot of fans, a lot of insiders have already said we're tired of it. It'll get to the point where we almost contradict ourselves because they'll end it in such a way where it's like I just said, okay, what were the last 6 months all about if it's going to end like this? And you'd normally call it TNA typical style, TTS, just making up words left and right. But that's the only thing I'm scared of, that all this will essentially be for nothing because it's already tired us out. And then, so they'll see, once they finally decide to get rid of it, it'll be somewhere down the line where they'll just, I hope it doesn't end this way, but I just see them going, all right, they're already sick of it, so it doesn't matter how we ended it, even though it does, because you based your last 6 months, if not better, a product on this angle. So for it to end in a Samoa Joe fashion or anything else that's typical TNA wouldn't make sense. But that's not the highlight, so we won't spend forever on this. Additional TNA news. Sting announces he will be among the wrestlers performing at the June 11th, 2011 Baseball event, TNA Baseball event in Memphis, Tennessee. St. Louis Rams player James Laurinaitis told The Lantern that he would consider a WWE run if the lockout wipes out the NFL season. Quote, I should take up pro wrestling, he said. Quote, it would be a natural transition. I might have to try and get in the ring a little bit, take on a John Cena or a Randy Orton. So, but we've been bouncing in and out of that. We haven't really discussed it, but as it becomes more relevant, I think we will. You can see a lot of pro football players and vice versa, wrestlers going into pro football. Brock Lesnar. But it is a natural transition, but we'll discuss it more as it becomes something that is more of a definite, and it's kind of a scare tactic that I think the bigger people that control the season are using to kind of scare people. So until it becomes solidified, I really don't want to play with it. We can bounce it around, but not this show. Definitely a different show when there's a little more packed into it. This is basically a recap and wrestling news day. As I said, Impact ratings aren't in, and SmackDown I don't want to see till tonight. I don't want to hear about it till tonight. Even when I don't see it, I don't read about it until Friday. There's no... We can go back and forth on your opinion on spoilers. But Retro WrestleMania night. I mentioned this in yesterday's video that we might discuss it, and by the end of the video realized that I hadn't discussed it. But that's typical me. WrestleMania 20, if I'm correct, I don't have the box anymore. I just have, and this is sad, I have the second of a 3-disc set because in the transition of moving, I, for some reason, thought I wouldn't need it, and although I'm glad I still have disc 2 for, as they were your main event matches, the other stuff you can skip, but you might make fun of me because it's not the whole set. But on disc 2 is the Kurt Angle match versus Eddie Guerrero. Like I mentioned before, Victoria versus Molly Holly in a hair match, and triple threat Shawn Michaels, Triple H versus Chris Benoit. Well, Triple H versus Shawn Michaels versus Chris Benoit, if you want to word it correctly. And I was watching it as I Facebooked yesterday and the day before to a fan yesterday. I think it proves that you can still watch the wrestling character and the wrestler and not necessarily know or have to know anything about the man behind him. Like, there were 2 people there that haven't watched it since the 90s, and they knew who Chris Benoit was, they knew what he did, but the end of it, 4 people including, well, 3, hold on, 3, yeah, 4 people including myself said, decent match. And you don't really, and we didn't, even though we all knew it, but you don't, proving my point, I think that, and eventually I promise you guys, we are going to get our shit together. There's a couple different things in the works. I'm bringing back the guest host option. I'm going to take some people up on a lot of spots that they said they'd do for me, so prepare as we go into our 1-year anniversary for a lot of interesting content and bonus content. And the essential launch of the website, I think, will, at this point, put off until the 1-year anniversary. That way no one can say there wasn't ample, the people helping me can't say that they weren't given ample time to reconstruct and basically minimize the clutter. We want to give you an ad site that gives you news while tempts you into the member site, but at a member site that has no ads naturally, that kind of makes it worth paying the $250, starting at $250 a month. And because we don't want to rip anybody off, and we do appreciate any and all donations. But getting back to it, the segment of the show, I think there are three opinions, plus you guys already know my pre-existing opinion. I think you can watch and thoroughly enjoy Chris Benoit material without necessarily knowing anything about Chris Benoit. But if you're doing retro stuff and you're keeping even mild tabs on it, considering it made news coverage, there's a 99.9% chance you know all about Chris Benoit. And I doubt I'm the only person that can do this. And this is my argument for the Hall of Fame, for the fans that comment, and Owen Hart kind of gets thrown into this. And the way he gets thrown into this is Owen Hart, raised in wrestling, raised to love wrestling, loved wrestling, went through all the rigors that everybody else in that family did. I refer to Wrestling with Shadows if you really want insight. It's a contradiction DVD, but it does give insight into the family, into the Montreal Screwjob, and an overall perspective of the wrestling business, especially around when Vince was starting to feel the heat from WCW. So this is an interesting behind-the-scenes look at that. But how it relates to Owen Hart is with Martha Hart suing, and you remember it was one of our first viewers videos entitled "WrestleTalkShow Presents Martha Hart." What the fuck? There might have been another attack, that was definitely our segment, but there might have been another sentence there, but that's part of it, if not all of it. Is that I see it, and it was mentioned this week in wrestling. No, it was on an SWF episode I was re-listening to. Do you really think Owen would have a problem, and the stories are two different tragedies? One was a mechanical mistake, and one, at least in my opinion, was a created mistake. But for a man, speaking just on the Owen Hart incident for a minute, for a man that loved this business, I find it, along with many other columnists and reviewers and fans, I find it extremely hard to believe that Owen Hart wouldn't want his likeness, and that he wouldn't find joy in the fact that his likeness could still be used in the business he loved if certain people allowed it. Owen's estate could quietly make money, but Martha, you threatened the WWE to a point where they just phase him out. And he was another good wrestler. It's my argument for Chris Benoit. It's my argument when you see every year on the Facebook, if you're a fan of it, Owen Hart for the Hall of Fame. Whether or not that'll happen, I imagine it'll happen eventually when it suits WWE. But Chris Benoit, okay, argue that, throw that out. He'll never be in the Hall of Fame, whatever. But someone who didn't have Benoit's background and loved the business he was in, or wouldn't have done a stunt like that, I don't think would want to be exposed as much as possible if he left. He would want that wrestling legacy to live on. And when you're being contradicted by lawsuits, it's hard to keep it going, nor does it inspire the company that he used to work for to want to keep it going because of the repercussions Martha Hart has put on the estate and likeness and rights of Owen Hart. My point that I'm getting at is focused on suing and apparently making it a cash cow. But my argument is if she just stopped and let them use what they were going to use, the promotion will pay. It will make money rather than forcing the hands of the people that formerly employed him and want to use his archived material. If you just let them do it, it would be a cash cow, would it not? The estate would get paid every time they used it. They would breathe easier because they don't have to tap dance on landmines to use it. And at the same time, Trifecta makes you money for the rights use, the video use, whatever. You're trying to make it into a cash cow, but if you left it alone, it could still be a cash cow, is my point. Now, my argument for Benoit is you can still watch them. Like I said, a 90s wrestling fan came into the Chris Benoit triple threat, watched it through and through, and literally almost said, despite what he's done, you can watch his wrestling and not know anything about him and still enjoy the match. And that's my point. We're not talking about Chris Benoit, the human being. We're not talking about VH1 behind the ring fucking documentaries, Life and Death, where he went to elementary school. All I'm saying is respect the wrestling. And that's my argument for the Hall of Fame. You're not condoning the killer. You're not condoning the person. You're not referencing the person. You're paying tribute to the wrestling character. And a man that dedicates 22 years of his life into this business, like one of the comments made the other night watching that DVD, is how come everybody got over and Chris Benoit is having his first title match and looks older than everybody else. And my answer was he'd already spent 22 years in the circuit, done the circuit, and finally came full circle where now, as of that WrestleMania, was his time to shine. One could say it was an attachment to what was already ongoing, but because of that title run, WWE made money. Because WWE made money, they let Chris Benoit slide 3 separate drug tests. So that's where it comes in that this was a manufactured outcome, in my opinion, because you essentially, my other video said, did WWE ask for its own problems or create its own problem? And I think they did in a part. And I'll recap it all real quick. When you basically let him slide on 3 separate drug tests because he's your champion and everyone loves him, loves his style of wrestling, you basically say you have to take the drug test, but after your second time, or your first time, and you literally show your hand and do nothing to Chris Benoit as a consequence, haven't you essentially created the problem or enabled the problem? When his blood was taken at time of death, it was 50 times, if not better, actual person versus steroids. You know, they do the blood per steroid like thing. He was 54% more steroid than anything else. That happens over time and long-term use. Who was condoning the long-term use? Arguably Vince McMahon, because Chris Benoit, without it, had a Rey Mysterio size, but a world heavyweight, a cruiserweight build, but a world heavyweight character. And my argument with Vince and big guys in the company is Vince is a big guy kind of guy. If you're not, and you're not a Rey Mysterio or can move like a Rey Mysterio, you don't have an advantage unless it's a couple feet. You're a foot to 3 feet in size difference, but your build makes up for the height difference, is the contradiction in WWE, and that's what it was when all this transpired, in my opinion. But to recap, you have someone who loved the business, died doing a skit for the business, and wouldn't have agreed to it if he wouldn't have loved it, and a wife that's suing over every little thing and to make sure the estate makes money, where it can be argued, again, if she let certain companies, various companies, I think, would want to show tribute. When you show tribute or showcase one of the matches, they're going to pay for the rights. So you don't have to sue. You can open it up, and as long as the usage is respectful and tasteful, as it would be in a wrestling type scenario or a tribute type video. All it would be is Owen Hart's wrestling and Owen Hart, the wrestling character. Or characters, whatever one they decide to reincarnate and show tribute to. Where that the argument finally comes up, you're so busy suing, if you let these companies use the material, you could sit back and in Owen's honor, respect the business that he loved, keep him in the business, keep him noticed and in the business that he loved, and you'd make money by default. I don't understand this cutthroat approach and then wondering, the wrestling promotions are skittish because you put it in a situation, use it and get sued for more than the infraction was worth. Whereas, yes, it could be argued Chris Benoit's situation is a little different, but all in all, I'm just saying, respect the wrestler. You can watch the match, like the match, want to see more matches without knowing anything about the man behind the wrestling character. You could actually have a whole discussion. If me and the three friends wouldn't have gone back and forth, we could have watched that match and just discussed Chris Benoit matches. And yes, the tragedy would have been highlighted, but proving again, no one there, everyone knew about the tragedy, but everyone was talking on the level of the wrestling and the wrestler. There is a difference. What do you guys think? Let me know at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Interact with our online forum. Friend us at Facebook and Twitter, both at CWE Company. Subscribe and watch our over 100 archived videos at YouTube.com, including this one, at YouTube.com/CWE Company. Remember, when watching, to comment, like the video right under the play button, comment, and it'll be answered or responded to in a video. And again, logo contest, CWEcompany@gmail.com, featuring the initials of the show, WTS, or the whole show name, and any color scheme you can get creative with from now until midnight, May 14th, 2011. Visit our friends at pwtorch.com Monday through Friday. They have a weekly podcast every Tuesday night, smartwrestlingfan.com. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, the 3-hour Smart Wrestling Fan Wrestling Review Show. Interact with us, friend us, vote for us, support us any and all ways that you can. And until next time, this has been your wrestling news and discussion for the day, guys. I'm Joshua Zimmerman saying, have a great day.